Hello, welcome to another episode of Back of the Envelope with Hub OEM. So, one common objection we hear a lot from folks is that they have to get a quote from a supplier before they can then in turn quote their customer on a part. And it's a very labor intensive process and doesn't lend itself well for selling through a web based portal like Hub OEM. In fact, it often looks something like this model here on the left. I get a request for a quote from a customer. I go get my quote from my supplier. I add my margin, I add my time, and then turn around and pass it back. And I do this for customer one, customer two, customer three, customer four, customer five, etc. The model we are advocating for, and we'll walk through in just a minute, is where you get that request for quote from the first customer. You take all of that information, and as you quote them, you then push it out to the web based portal. And now customers 2 through 22, or however many there are, will see it as a listed price for the entire duration that your original quote was good for. So, for example, you get a quote for 30 days valid from your supplier. For the next 30 days, people will be able to see that valid pricing listed on your portal. So, just to show you what kind of an impact that can have, let's take a look at, we'll say you have a part that has a 18-month service life, typical replacement rate. Then you have that part out in the field at 300 of your customers, and about half of your customers are diligent about replacing parts as often as you say they need to replace. That's a pretty reasonable target, depending on how likely it actually is to fail in 18 months, right? So then you get your quote from your supplier, and it's good for 30 days. So if you were looking at that particular part, you're going to quote it on average about 8.3 times per month if you have 300 customers that are all using it, right? Um, Even if it's just a very small activity to do that, you're going to spend a lot of time on that. So if one of your quoting employees, let's say they are cranking out 100 of these quotes a month and they're spending 30 minutes on each of them, you can drive that 100 quotes down to about 14 quotes because a lot of people are going to see a listed part out on the platform, and rather than putting it in an RFQ and you having to go through the process of creating a quote and sending it to them and them accepting it, they're just going to order it and add to cart. And so that person's going to save hours and hours and hours of time. Just with the numbers we used here, it looks like 73% of the time they spent quoting is now going to be freed up. So it's a tremendous value driver from the standpoint of quote it once, then everybody who wants it can buy it. And then at the end of the time period, when the original quote expires, you can request a new one and repopulate it, and it'll be free again for everybody. And you don't have to do that right away if there's not an immediate need, but essentially it prevents duplication of effort. So thank you very much for your time.